Thank you.
Thank you. That is noted. We can now proceed to invite counsel for petitioner in petition number E002 of 2022.
Thank you very much, Your Ladyship, the Chief Justice, members of the court. I wish to make submissions this afternoon before you on behalf of the third petitioners in the consolidated petition. The petition filed by the third petitioner, initially as petition number 2 of 2022, raises or has issues that deal with all the issues that had been framed all 9 issues that had been framed for determination by the court. But in respect of issues number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, I will rely on the written submissions that we have filed or that have been filed on behalf of the third petitioner. And I will utilize my time on my feet this afternoon to focus on issue number 6, the conjoined issue number 7, number 8, and number 9 of the issues that the court framed or the court has framed for determination. I wish to get straight into issue number 6. And my humble understanding of issue number 6, and I will read it just for clarity, whether the IEBC has carried out the verification, tallying, and declaration of results in accordance with Article 138(3)(c) and 138(10) of the Constitution. Again, it is my humble understanding from the manner in which that issue is phrased that what the court is inquiring into is not whether tallying and verification should be done in accordance with Article 138(3)(c) and 138(10), but indeed whether tallying was carried out by Article 138(3)(c) and 138(10) by the IEBC. Time was taken by my learned senior colleague, Mr. Paul Mwangi, earlier on this morning, to make submissions as to what the IEBC is, the meaning and definition of the IEBC, and what amounts or what body or group of people then amount to the IEBC. And that is a submission of law, and I don't intend to repeat the submissions that were made by my learned senior colleague. But the issue as framed in number 6 invites a detailed factual inquiry. And that factual inquiry is the factual question of was the tallying and verification during the or after the presidential election that is the subject of these petitions indeed carried out by the IEBC. I wish to start my submissions by referring you to a press statement, and that press statement is by the chairman of the IEBC. I believe he's the second respondent. That press statement is dated the 17th of August 2022, and that press statement is to be found in volume 4 of the third petitioner's documents at pages 493 to 496. That press statement is dated the 17th of August. It is headed, the subject is staff murder, profiling, and misleading reports on the presidential election. It is under the hand of the chairman of the IEBC, and it is divided into 3 parts. I wish to focus my submissions on part 3. And part 3 is headed Declaration of Presidential Results. And I submit that this press statement is important because it is the first account by the second respondent as to how tallying and verification took place. In line 12, he states, for the avoidance of doubt, the law provides that the chairperson of the commission is the returning officer of the presidential election. I will emphasize on that the chairperson of the commission is the returning officer of the presidential election. I will make submissions later on in my submissions, and I will hope to persuade you that there is no such position as the returning officer of the presidential election. It is a creation of the chairperson of the IEBC, and it is created for the purposes of executing a very calculated scheme. Be that as it may, I wish you to then go on to the second paragraph from the end at line 34, where he says, as per Article 86C of the Constitution of Kenya, the results from the polling stations are openly and accurately collated and promptly announced by the returning officer. The next sentence is important. It is also important to note that Regulation 87 of the Election General Regulations provides, and he then goes on to state, that he, as the chairperson, is the one who is then empowered to tally or to verify and tally the results. Again, later on on page 495, he goes on to state, this constitutional mandate, and he's talking about the mandate to tally and verify, this constitutional mandate falls squarely on the chairman of the commission, who is the national returning officer. Again, he repeats that, as gazetted in Gazette Notice number 4956 of the 28th of April 2022. The role of the national returning officer for the presidential election is not a shared responsibility and not subject to plenary discussion of the commission. Very important, because at the end of the day, this is how the second respondent then tallied, verified, and declared the results, but we will get to that later on. He states in the paragraph beginning, as the gazetted national returning officer, that in the spirit of teamwork, the chairperson involved the commissioners. That is all he did. In the spirit of teamwork, he felt that there was no duty to involve them. All he did was involve the commissioners. And again, later on during my submissions, I will get to that. My learned senior colleagues who submitted before me dwelt in detail on the content of Regulation 83. The content of Regulation 83.2 and Regulation 87.3.1, Regulation 87.3 in its entirety, and the manner in which those two regulations enable the chairperson singularly to tally or to verify and tally results in the presidential election. I do not wish to take any time to go through those two regulations, merely to state that it is my humble and respectful position that those two regulations are inconsistent with the provisions of Article 138(3)(c) of the Constitution, because they enable the result in the presidential election to be verified and tallied in a manner other than envisaged by the Constitution. There is a substantive prayer in the petition to declare those two regulations unconstitutional. And I state for that reason that relief should be granted. Later on in my submissions, I will then make submissions as to the consequence of those regulations being unconstitutional and having then hopefully being declared unconstitutional by this court. The fact that the tallying and verification of the result in the presidential election was done solely by the chairman is laid bare in the provisions of Gazette Notice number 9540 of 8th of August 2022. This again was referred to by my learned senior colleague Mr. Firoz Noroji whilst he's on his feet, and this Gazette Notice is to be found at page 36 of the affidavit sworn by the second respondent and drawn by the firm of my good and learned friend, Mr. Eric Gumbo and Associates, at page 36 of that affidavit. Mr. Noroji took the court through that affidavit extensively, through that Gazette notice extensively. I only want to emphasize that before the election, the chairman of the commission is clear that it is he who will tally, who will verify and tally the results. And for some reason, the chairman has the chairman of the IEBC had the propensity to publish Gazette notices even where he didn't need to, because there was no need, there is no statutory basis or regulatory basis or even constitutional basis for gazetting the result pathway. But he went ahead and did it. And it is clear, and I submit it is admitted by the chairman of the IEBC that he exclusively, to the exclusion of the rest of the commissioners of the IEBC, tallied and verified the result for the presidential election. So as to determine conclusively that the tallying and verification was done exclusively by the chairman, it is again important to ask the question, where were the other commissioners? Where was the rest of the IEBC as the chairman was tallying and verifying the results? Again, I wish to refer you to the same affidavit that I have, the affidavit sworn by the chairman and drawn by the firm of G&A Advocates on the 26th of August this year. And it starts from the second paragraph. He states in the second paragraph that in my capacity as the chairperson of the commission, I was the returning officer of the presidential election. He then goes on later on in the affidavit at paragraph 45 to state that for the proper management of roles at the tallying center of the presidential elections, I had designated in writing specific roles to each of the commissioners and other commission staff. Annexed here to as WWC 9 is a bundle containing the said communication. Again, this bundle and this communication is important, members of the court, because it states clearly what the other commissioners or the roles that the chairman had designated the other commissioners to do. At page 41, there is an internal memo or a letter signed by the chairman on the 22nd of July addressed to the vice chairperson Juliana Cherere and Commissioner Boya Molu. And it is headed Appointment to the Media and Call Center Management Team for the Presidential Tallying Center, Bomas of Kenya. And he goes on, he says, consequently, you are hereby appointed to the Media and Incident Reporting Team of the Presidential Election Tallying Center as follows. Juliana Cherere, Team Leader. Commissioner Boya Molu, Alternate Team Leader. And their roles are set out there. Terms of reference of your appointment: provide liaison between the Presidential Returning Officer, who is himself, and the National Communication Center, preparing periodic briefs for the Presidential Returning Officer to address the media, briefing the Presidential Returning Officer on electoral activities across the country. Nothing to do with tallying and verification. The two subjects of that letter are commissioners of the IEBC. The next letter is on page 42, also dated the 22nd of July. This one is addressed to Commissioner Francis Wanderi and Commissioner Irene Masit. Again, under the hand of the chairman, and it is appointment to the Logistics, Welfare and Security Team at the Presidential Tally Center, Bomas of Kenya. Again, he appoints them in the second paragraph. Consequently, you are hereby appointed to oversight, provide policy direction and strategy formulation for the Welfare and Security Team of the Presidential Election Tallying Center. He then states their names and he states their terms of reference as security of the Tally Center and installations, the Tallying Center's logistics, planning and organization, security of members of the commission, staff, VIPs and other visitors, transport for commission staff, any other duties assigned. Important, those are two commissioners. None of them has been assigned to tally and verify. The third letter is on page 43, and this one is addressed to Commissioner Justus Nyangaya. Again, Justus Nyangaya is appointed to be in charge of dignitaries and protocol. And in the second paragraph, he is told that as team leader for dignitaries and protocol, he will be responsible for providing support services to the Commission, managing protocol of dignitaries and VIPs, managing access to the Presidential Tally Center for accreditation, for accredited media, observers and agents, and any other responsibility. Now, those are out of 6 commissioners. Those are 5 commissioners. None of them is assigned to tallying and verification. There is a last letter, also dated the 22nd of July on page 44. This one is addressed to Commissioner Professor Abdi Guliye and Mr. Marjan Hussein Marjan. I wish to point out to this court and ask the court to note that Marjan Hussein Marjan is not a commissioner, but he is merely the CEO of the IEBC. Now, these two are appointed to the results management team at the Presidential Tally Center. Their duty. The tallying process continues unconstitutionally as it was being conducted, and I want to pose the question and attempt an answer to the question, how does that process then end? That process ends as set out in paragraphs, again, the same affidavit of the chairman, at paragraph 76 onwards. But the story that he tells, or the deposition that he makes, starts in paragraph 66. And I will read it because it is important. He deposed, shortly after 2 p.m., the commissioners and I had a meeting to be briefed on the final result by the commission secretary, stroke CEO, an alternate leader of the Tally Center. The meeting was only for a briefing. He then goes on to say, the briefing was to be done before my declaration in accordance with Article 138(10) of the Constitution. So according to the chairman, all that was going to take place between him and the commissioners was a briefing, and he then goes on and declares the results. What did he do? After he narrates the story of the visit between paragraph 67 and 75, he then goes on under the substantive heading, Commission Briefing of Final Results. After the NSAC team had left, the Commission Secretary and Chief Executive Officer, who was also the alternate leader of the team of the Tallying Center, Mr. Marjan Hussein Marjan, walked into the boardroom. The purpose of the meeting was to receive the final tally of results of the presidential election before I could proceed to declare. From the chairman's own evidence, he assembles a team that comprises Professor Guliye and Mr. Marjan. They tally and verify the result, and Mr. Marjan is merely coming to brief the commission. What happens after that? There is between paragraph 77, where he states that copies of the results were handed to the commissioners, and that is all that was done. The result had been tallied and verified elsewhere. The copies are merely handed. There is a conversation. There is no agreement. And of importance, at paragraph 81, the chairman deposed as follows. I walked out of the meeting room accompanied by Commissioner Professor Guliye, Commissioner Molu, and the Chief Executive Officer. And he then went to the auditorium and declared the results. In the chairman's own words, and I submit that his narrative of what took place is important. That is how the tallying and verification of the result in the presidential election took place. To answer or to attempt an answer to the question that is sought by this court by framing ground number 6 as it is, whether IBC carried out verification, tallying, and declaration of the results in accordance with Article 138(3)(c) and 138(10), I would answer that question in the negative. Tallying was carried out by the chairman alone. At best, the chairman, Professor Guliye, and Mr. Marjan. A quick look at Section 5.1 of the IEBC Act would disclose that those three gentlemen, however eminent, are not the IEBC. What the Constitution enables the chairman to do on his own is to declare the result. I submit that the election is a process, it is a progressive process, and the completion of one process enables another. If you do not complete voting, you cannot tally. If you don't complete tallying, you cannot declare. I submit that tallying and verification, having not taken place as provided by the Constitution, then there was no result for the chairman to declare. There is an attempted justification by the chairman for his decision to tally and verify the result on his own. That justification exists in an affidavit sworn by the chairman. This time it is drawn by the firm of Iseme Kamau and Maema Advocates. It is at page 14, at paragraph 62. The chairman attempts to justify his decision to tally and verify alone from this court's decision in Raila 2017. With tremendous respect to the chairman, the issue of his ability to tally and verify on his own was not an issue in Raila 2017. And with the clear provisions of the Constitution, in Article 138(3)(c), there can be no judicial foundation for the chairman's tallying and verification on his own. At the beginning of my submissions, I had submitted that I wish to demonstrate to this court that the chairman executed a very well calculated scheme to grab the election and to run the election on his own. And this is how, in my estimation, he did it. Elections are normally commenced by a notice of elections that is issued under Section 14 of the Elections Act. Regulation 12 of the Elections General Regulations then provide that certain specific notices will be issued for the presidential election. Regulation 12.2 provides as follows: immediately after the publication of a notice under Section 14, and the notice under Section 14 of the Act is published by the Commission, the returning officer of every constituency shall notify the holding of a presidential election in formate. Now that's important, because I had also said that earlier on that there is no such role as a presidential returning officer or national returning officer. And I say so because of the provisions of Article 138(2) of the Constitution. Article 138(2) of the Constitution says, if two or more candidates for president are nominated, an election shall be held in each constituency. An election shall be held in each constituency. A returning officer is defined in Section 2 of the Elections Act as a person who conducts an election. The chairman is merely enabled to declare. The conduct of the election by dint of Article 138(2) is by 290 returning officers. The notice that they were required to publish under Regulation 12(2) was never published. The 290 notices from the 290 returning officers was never published. There is no position like the national returning officer. So the first infraction is that there are no notices. The chairman constitutes himself as the national returning officer, and the notices are not published. The chairman gazetted himself. I believe the gazette notice is the gazette notice, I think it is the 22nd or 28th of May, he gazetted himself as the National Returning Officer. As a matter of good electoral practice, returning officers are gazetted with deputies. The chairman gazetted himself with no deputy. It was his election to run as he saw fit. There is the issue of the deployment or the unilateral transfer of returning officers. My learned colleagues who appear for the commissioners have dealt with that extensively in their affidavits, and I'm sure they will submit on it when they have their time on their feet. Again, the deployment of commissioners at Bomas was not accidental, it was deliberate, it is documented, and the details are spelled out, the duties are spelled out in detail. Again, the postponement of the elections is another issue. And I wish to pose this question at this juncture. We have interpreted constitutional time as being strict, but the chairman of the IEBC has on more than one occasion dealt with constitutional time as if it is elastic. The elections that he postponed on the 8th of August were not the first elections that he postponed. In the second week of March 2000, the then sitting MP for a constituency in Kwale called Msambweni passed away. The Constitution provided that by-election be held within 90 days. That by-election was not held until the 20th of December 2000, or not 2000, 2020. Again, that is another election that was postponed, and it just went by. The manner in which the commission conducted itself, or the chairman conducted himself, around the commission dealing with these very petitions is also instructive in the manner in which the chairman had, assumed certain roles and capacities to himself. I wish to refer to the affidavit of Juliana Cherere, filed in this court on the 26th of August. And I wish to refer members of the court to the to annexure JC12. That annexure is correspondence, it is internal memos within the commission. The first one is signed by the 4 commissioners, and it is a request for a special meeting whose agenda is to deliberate the commission's position in light of the presidential elections petition filed in court on the 22nd of August. That letter is dated the 24th of August, 2 days after the petition is filed. Annexure JC12 or JC13 is a follow-up to that letter. There is no response, or there is no response by the chairman to the initial memo, and there is a follow-up now asking for a meeting on Friday the 26th at 9 a.m. at the Commission's offices to discuss that purpose. Of tremendous importance is the letter, or is the internal memo exhibited as JC14. This is a response to the request for a meeting. This one is not under the hand of the chairman, but under the hand of the CEO, where he convenes that meeting for today, the 31st, the first day of hearing. Is that a chairman acting in the best interest of the commission? Is that a chairman acting constitutionally responsibly? The effect of the unconstitutionality in the election was dealt with by this court's decision in Joho 2014. Anything done under that unconstitutional piece of legislation is a nullity. In the brief time that I have left, to answer the question, having been conducted as it was, there is no result. The votes that were cast by the people of Kenya having not been properly tallied and verified, or verified and tallied, there can be no declaration. I wish to assert the submission made by my learned senior colleagues that an election is a sovereign process that belongs to all Kenyans. And via the Constitution, we have delegated the management of that sovereign process to the IEBC. it was a constitutional infraction of monumental proportions for the chairman to seize the election as he did. And for those reasons, it is my humble request that all the prayers that are sought in petition number 2 of 2022 be granted.
Thank you, Council. Next. Yes.
If may please, my lords and my ladies, I start by saying that election is a process. I'm Otieno Willis, appearing for petitioner number 4. Election is a process that ends upon the determination of the true wish of the voter. And when that process is unconstitutional, it is not enough to throw numbers that are arrived at through an unconstitutional way to assert that that is the true will of the voter. The first issue I wish to address, my lords and my ladies, is issue number 6. And issue number 6, quote to it, is Article 138(3)(c) of the Constitution, which vests upon the IEBC the duty to tally and verify results from all polling stations and to declare the result. I want the court to take note of the last part of Article 138(3)(c). The IEBC shall tally and verify the count and declare the result, not the results. Results is the numbers. Result, without an S, is the outcome. And I want the court to notice that 138(3)(c) is a responsibility on the commission, not on the chairman. So the first declaration of the result of the verified and the tallied counts is made by IEBC as a commission. Then the chairperson, again, the word of the Constitution used is the chairperson in Article 138(10) shall now proceed to formally declare the results and issue the certificate. My lord and my ladies, Article 138(3) sets out a 4-tier process. Tier 1 is the polling station. Tier 2 is the constituency. Tier 3 is the National Tallying Center, in brackets IEBC Commission. And Tier 4 is the chairperson. Tier 2 cannot function without Tier 1. A constituency cannot function if polling fails at the polling station. A returning officer cannot go to a polling station and make a declaration of the results of that polling station. It's not his function. The IEBC as a commission cannot go to a constituency and fill Form 34B for a particular constituency. If they do so, they failed it. Similarly, the chairperson cannot move from Tier 4 and go to Tier 3 and purport to verify and tally the votes, the counts, and make a declaration. Each tier must perform its function. It is now tried that under Article 81, elections must be conducted by an independent body. The presidential elections whose results we are disputing were conducted by an independent individual, not a body. Because if it was a body, I would not have been served with documents from commissioners confirming they did not participate in the verification and tallying of the count. a majority of the commissioners, IEBC in their replying affidavits served upon me, has confirmed they did not tally and verify those results. My lords and my ladies, I wish to state, Chapter 15 of our Constitution establishes constitutional commissions and independent offices. Where the Constitution desired a function to be performed by an individual, it established an independent office. The Office of Auditor General, the Office of Controller of Budget. But where it desired a function to be performed by a commission, it established an independent commission. The Office of Election Management Body is a commission. It is not established as a chief elections officer as an independent office, as Wafula Chebukati seeks to run the commission. My lords, if the people of Kenya desired to have an individual, they would have simply reverted back to 1988 when we had a supervisor of elections. I will not go back into what has been submitted, but only to add on that point that where a commission has been properly constituted and the number is set as an odd number, the Constitution and the law presupposes there may be dissent. And the oddity of the number is to make sure that ultimately a decision will be arrived at. In this particular case, the oddity of the numbers led to a decision of the commission. And a majority of those commissioners have told us in their affidavits that they did not carry out a tally and verification of the results. Tier 3 failed. Confirmed. Let us go to the state of mind of Mr. Wafula Chebukati on the 15th when he was conducting this function. Just to confirm to you that he did it himself. In page 12 of volume 1 of my documents is a statement dated 17th of August by Wafula Chebukati, in which he says that it was his sole responsibility and that the commissioners had no role in that process. That was his state of mind. But the same person, when he comes to court in his replying affidavit, at paragraph 75, 76, 84, 85, he turns around and says, the commission in a collegiate manner arrived at a decision. Why is he lying? If on the 17th he has told us it was his sole responsibility. When he comes to court now, he says the verification was done by everybody. And it's important that I point out in the replying affidavit by William Ruto at paragraph 16 and 17, he also says that it is the sole responsibility of the chairperson to verify and to tally the results. That was their state of mind. But we are submitting it is not the law. The law is everybody must conduct it. These issues which we are raising were canvassed in the Maina Kiai case. Hele Khalifa, the petitioner number 1 in this petition, was a petitioner there. And the court said the IEBC, as opposed to its chairperson, upon receipt of prescribed forms containing tabulated results for the election of president, electronically transmitted to it from the near 40,000 polling stations, is required to tally and verify the results received. That was the law in Maina Kiai. And they go further to say the architecture of our laws is that the power to tally and verify cannot be vested in an individual. Supreme Court Raila Odinga 2017, the court said in paragraph 292, the failure